So what are you willing to trade your life for? That's a question that we don't like to talk about sometimes. It makes us a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe because there's an implication of finality. We don't want to talk about trading our life for anything. Maybe it's just because we don't like the fact that sometimes we have to make difficult choices. Whatever the reason is, we don't like to talk about it, but the fact is that every morning when we wake up, we get to do exactly that. We will trade our energy, our time, everything that we have for something. And the question is, what? When my dad was a little kid, he answered that question in one word, and the word was money. My granddad was a preacher, and that was back in the days when preachers were poor, and he was poor. And my dad decided that he wanted to be rich, and so he defined a goal. He said, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. Well, the problem was they lived in Idaho, and in the 1950s, I don't think there was $1 million in the entire state. So they moved to Colorado, and my dad got into the world of real estate development. It was the 1960s, and there was some sleepy little towns up in the mountains just starting, waking up, getting going, and he got into the development of those areas. Some of them you've heard about, like Winter Park and Vail. Well, it was a really good time to be there, and a lot of people were making a lot of money. My dad missed his goal. His goal was to be a millionaire by the time he was 30. He missed it by 1 year. And then he did it again. And he did it again, and again, and again, and again, 15, 16, 20 times over. And it was a great time for us to be kids in our family. We went to church in that big black Mercedes. My friends at school thought that we lived in a castle. For us, it was just home. But it's a pretty neat place. And then some funny realization started to creep in on my mom and dad's heart. They figured out that just because they were rich, they weren't necessarily happy. Life had been a whole lot more uncomplicated without all the stuff. It was what Stephen Covey talks about when he says we've climbed the ladder of success, and we get to the top and realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. I call it the happiness hole. And we keep trying to fill that hole full of stuff, full of people, full of experiences, and we're looking for that thing that makes us happy. And my folks realized that that wasn't making them happy. So they sat my brother and I down at the little kitchen table one Saturday morning, and they said, boys, there's going to be a few changes around here. Mom and I have started something called a foundation, and we just gave away your inheritance. And when you're in high school, that all sounds okay. When you get to college, that's a whole nother conversation. You did what? But that's exactly what they did. They gave it to churches and schools and all different places. And then my dad had this other realization, that all of your assets aren't necessarily in your bank account. You've got other stuff in your life that you can give away too. It's that stuff between the head, between the ears, your experiences. It's the know-how. It's the know-who. We used to call those Rolodex files. Now they're called Outlook. All of those things. So he started doing economic consulting. And ultimately, he was invited to go to Brazil to help President C.U.R.E back in the days when they were having a really tough economic crisis. Like they are now again, I guess. And so he was down there trying to work with the president, and his interpreter was a medical student. Her name was Lorena. And Lorena was studying to be a doctor just like her mom. And one day she said, Jim, I would like to take you to this little clinic up in the highlands outside of Rio, a town of about 300,000 people. She said, my mom and I, we volunteer our time. We do pro bono health care for these people. And would you come see what we do? And my dad said, yeah. And they went to this little town. And there was a house there, and this doctor was trying to be the primary health care for this entire community. My dad walked in there, a long line of people waiting out in that hot Brazilian sun. He walked into that house, and in the front room was the primary examination room, and there was an old metal prep table and a box of re-rolled bandages. And they had turned the bedroom into the pediatrics ward, and the pediatrics ward was a baby scale and some Walt Disney posters. And the guy had a dental clinic on the back porch, And the drill was so old you had to run it with your foot like an old sewing machine. And my dad, it just broke his heart. He came back to Denver a couple weeks later, and he was having lunch with some friends, and he was telling them about this experience. And he said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I just promised that doctor I would help him. And one of his buddies said, named Greg Lowe, Greg says, well, Jim, that's an easy problem. He said, Pete and I, we own a medical wholesale company. We'll give you stuff. And you know, they gave my dad $50,000 worth of medical supplies. And then they got on the phone and they started calling everybody else in the business. And in about 30 days, they had filled my parents' garages full of medical supplies and equipment. My parents paid to ship that down to Brazil, and that was 1987, and that was how this whole thing got started. I was on my own quest then. I passed the bar just a few months after my 22nd birthday, and I went to be an attorney in a big agricultural manufacturing company in the Midwest. We got doing mergers and acquisitions, and I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, so I went back to get a PhD in finance. And I wanted to spend my life running with the wolves of Wall Street, just without the quaaludes and the prostitutes. My dad told me, he said I could use some help doing this. And I thought my give back had been going to San Diego and teaching at the university, which is not charity, by the way. But I told him I would help him out. We got a grant for $75,000 to pay my friend Doreen and my buddy Dave and myself, and we were going to blow through that money in 6 months, and I think we all thought we were going to go do something else. Fast forward 18 years later, we now have become what they tell me is the world's largest organization by volume, shipping medical supplies and equipment to the poorest people in the world. Thank you. Statistics tell us that half the world's population, 3 billion people, live on $2.50 a day. And they're going to work 10 to 12 hours to get that money. And at that level of poverty, you can't afford to get sick. You can't afford to get injured. You can't afford to get pregnant. The truth is that there's a lot of moms around the world where pregnancy, where life should be an experience that they celebrate. And the problem is that for them it's a death sentence. And the crazy thing about that is that the things that we need to keep those dads and those moms alive, those little kids alive, are simple things. It's like suture. Doctors don't have any suture. Doctors don't have any gloves. The operating theaters don't have any equipment. And these people die. And in the United States, we have so much of this stuff that we don't know what to do with it. We waste it. So all Project C.U.R.E does is we go to manufacturers and wholesalers, go to hospitals and clinics, and we collect everything from catheters to CAT scans. We put it in 6 big distribution warehouses. They're in Denver and Phoenix and Nashville and Houston, Texas, Chicago, Philadelphia. There's about 30 people on staff, and last year we had 17,000 volunteers. This year we'll have 25,000 volunteers. And these people are going to gather this stuff up. They're going to sort it. They're going to pack it. They're going to fix the equipment. They're going to put it in 40-foot cargo containers, semi-truck trailers, and we're going to deliver 180 semi-truck trailers into those communities where those people need it the most. And it's saving people's lives all over the world. Now, in 18 years, I've made entirely too many mistakes. And next week, I'll probably make some more. I've learned a few things, and I want to share with you just a couple of those things. I've learned that people don't work for money. People work for passion and purpose. Now, we got to collect a paycheck because we still owe a mortgage on the house, you got this car thing, got to eat, clothes are good. But that's not what we do. That's not the legacy we leave. That's not the work that we engender in our lives. That's not the thing that gets us up out of bed in the morning and gets our feet on the ground so excited that we just can't stand it. We put all of our creativity into it. We leave it for our kids. That's work. Too many times we just show up and collect a paycheck. That's not work. People work for passion and purpose. Daniel Pink talked about this in his book, Drive. We have created an entire economic system that's based on the premise that I can get people to do for me what I want them to do if I just throw a little bit more money at them. And Daniel Pink says it doesn't work. We hired their body. We brought their mind on board. We never engaged their hearts. This is a huge lesson for those of us who are leading organizations. We have people in our organizations that have decided to trade their life for our mission. And we owe to them passion and purpose. It's our job to marry the what we ask them to do with the why we ask them to do it. You connect a link between their passion and purpose and what we're all about. That's a huge lesson for those of us who are employees in organizations, or we're members at a church or a civic club, or we get involved in other nonprofits and NGOs. Maybe it's time for a little passion, purpose checkup. Is the thing that I'm engaged in that organization, worth trading my life for? Has it engaged my passion? Is this the reason that I'm here? And if the answer to that question is no, let's fix it. Let's fix it. Because if you haven't engaged your passion and purpose, you're never going to be much good at it anyway. There's somebody who's passionate about it that will be better than you. And you're never going to be happy. It doesn't work that way. It wasn't that the money that my mom and dad had was bad. Money's good. It does a lot of good things. It wasn't that all the stuff was bad. It just wasn't filling up that happiness hole. And if this is resonating with you, and you're saying, you know what, I've got some stuff going on in my life that's not bringing me passion, it's not hitting my purpose, I have one word of advice for you today, and that is stop. No is an okay answer. And then find that thing that really speaks to your heart. You say, well, Doug, what does that have to do with happiness? And I want to connect the dots for you. In my 18 years at Project C.U.R.E, in my experience, the happiest people that I have met are the people who have aligned their passion and their purpose with service, with helping other people. And it wasn't me who said that. It was Albert Schweitzer who said that. Schweitzer had been a Lutheran minister in Germany, and he played the organ, and everything he did was about church. And he kept reading when he was preparing his sermons that maybe God loved poor people. Maybe there was something to that. And so he went back at the age of 30 and he got a medical degree and he decided to be a doctor. And he went to a place that we now know as Gabon, Africa, and he started treating people who had never, ever, ever seen a doctor before in their life. That's why he got the Nobel Prize. World War I broke out. He was physically exhausted. He went back to Europe. As soon as the war was over, he went back down there. You can go to the Schweitzer Hospital today in Gabon, and he's buried there on the river because he said, this is where my heart is. This is where my body should be too. Schweitzer said this: I don't know what your destiny will be, but this one thing I do know: the only ones among you who will ever be truly happy are those who seek and find ways to serve other people. My folks thought they could fill that happiness void with stuff. Nice stuff, but it was stuff. The only ones among you who will ever be truly happy are those who seek and find ways to serve other people. You say, well, Doug, that's an obvious thing. We talk about it all the time. I don't know. In law, there's this term called quid pro quo. And what that is a fancy Latin term. And all it means is, I scratch your back, you got to scratch mine. I'm going to do something nice for you. That means I'm entitled to you doing something nice for me. And we build our systems on this. In nonprofits, a lot of nonprofits do this as a fundraising technique. They'll buy these huge mailing lists, and they have this rule. You send out 6, 7, 10, 12, whatever the number is, pieces of mail, and if those people don't respond, write them off. That's not service. We do this in our families, don't we? Hey, honey, I'll wash the dishes, I'll make dinner, but tonight I'm going golfing afterwards. I do something nice for you, you got to do something nice for me. And that's the system that we've built. And maybe that system is wrong. The incredible thing about this whole Project C.U.R.E. experiment is that there's 25,000 people who are going to show up in these warehouses, and they're going to do projects. They're going to intervene in some of the toughest stories on earth. The refugees, the earthquakes, Ebola, poverty. And they're going to intervene in places where, frankly, sometimes it's really even hard to pronounce these places where we're working. How about Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso? That is a place. They're never going there. Those people that they're going to work for, and they're working in cold warehouses in Colorado and in Chicago. They're working in hot warehouses in Phoenix and in Houston, Texas. And I can tell you, I don't pay to air condition or cool warehouses. Why? Why would they come out and do something for these people? These people will never, ever be able to do something back. Ever. They probably won't even be able to say thank you because they don't speak the language, and a phone call from there to here is really expensive. And they do it because they've discovered that it's okay to live your life in service to other people. They have a passion and a purpose that's aligned with service. And these are some of the happiest people I've ever met, starting with my parents. And it's absolutely amazing. What if we took that lesson and we applied it in our companies? What if we decided that those employees were our passion and purpose and we existed to serve them? Would we do anything that would hurt those people? I think not. Would we ever engage in doing something that was ethically dishonest to our clients if we really thought that our passion and our purpose, our reason for being every day was to serve those people? I don't think so. I think if we really started to apply this, we would discover some things that would probably be revolutionary, and there would be a lot of us that would be a whole lot happier than when we were trying to fill that happiness hole with other stuff. I don't know what your destiny will be, but this one thing that I do know, the only ones among you who will ever be truly happy are those who seek and find ways to serve other people. God bless you on your quest. Thank you.